I wasn't supposed to test that morning. I had promised myself, sworn really, that I wouldn't take another test before the weekend. I had convinced myself that waiting an extra 2 days would protect me from another heartbreak. But when I opened my eyes and saw that soft gray light stretching across the bedroom ceiling, something in me whispered, just check. Just this once. I moved slowly, careful not to wake Michael. The floor felt cold under my feet as I walked to the bathroom, my heart thudding against my ribs like it already knew what was coming. My hands trembled before I even tore the wrapper open. I'd taken so many tests over the past 14 months, each one a tiny battlefield where hope and dread went to war. The digital clock blinked 5:12 a.m. Too early to think clearly, too late to back out. I forced myself to look away as the test processed, staring instead at the chipped towel between my toes. I wrapped my arms around myself and whispered, "Don't get attached. Don't do this again." But when I finally looked down, there it was, a second line, faint, soft, almost like it was scared to appear. My breath caught. My knees buckled and I sank onto the edge of the tub, clutching the test like I needed to protect it from disappearing. I blinked once, twice, hard, unable to trust my own eyes. "Please be real," I whispered, voice cracking. "Please, please be real." A wave of warmth washed over me, overwhelming and terrifying all at once. After so many months of trying, of timing everything perfectly, of riding emotional roller coasters, this tiny pink line felt like the first drop of rain after a long drought. I sat there shaking for a full minute before I could stand. When I walked into the bedroom, the world felt unreal, like I was floating. Michael stirred when he heard me come in, rubbing his eyes. Alyssa?" he said, voice thick with sleep. "Everything okay?" I didn't trust my voice. I just held the test out with both trembling hands. He squinted, confused at first, and then he froze. The shock hit him like a physical force. "Your babe, is that?" His voice cracked open. I nodded, tears spilling over. "It's positive. I think this is really happening." Michael sat up instantly, pulling me into his arms so tightly I could feel his heartbeat racing against mine. His shoulders shook. I'd never seen him cry like that, not even during the hardest moments of our marriage. This felt like witnessing him break open and heal all at once. "We're pregnant," he whispered into my neck. "Oh my God, we're actually pregnant." We stayed like that, wrapped in each other, clinging to something fragile and enormous until the morning light brightened around us. When he finally leaned back, he cupped my cheeks gently, wiping tears with his thumbs. "Everything's going to be okay," he said softly. For a split second, I believed him. We sat on the bed with the test lying between us like a tiny miracle. Michael kept saying he knew this month was different, that he felt it. I smiled, but I didn't tell him the truth. I hadn't felt anything. Not hope, not intuition, just fear. Still, something inside me cracked open. I let myself imagine it. The nursery we'd talked about, the faint flutter of a heartbeat on an ultrasound screen, the baby clothes I always lingered over in stores but never allowed myself to buy. All the quiet little dreams we'd tucked away. For the first time in months, I didn't feel broken. But beneath the joy, beneath the trembling relief, beneath the soft glow of hope warming the room, something else flickered. A warning, a small, uneasy tug in my chest, a whisper I tried desperately to ignore. I pushed it down, hard, because this was supposed to be our moment, our beginning, our miracle. I didn't know then that joy and fear can live inside the same heartbeat. I didn't know this pregnancy would change me forever, or that pain was already quietly moving toward me. Not yet. Not today. Today, I let myself hope. And hope, for a moment, felt like enough. Michael kept touching my hand like he needed to make sure I was real. Every few seconds, he'd look back at the test again, almost laughing, almost crying, like he didn't know which emotion to choose. And honestly, neither did I. I walked to the kitchen to drink some water, needing a moment to breathe. The house was still and quiet, the kind of quiet that made the smallest sound echo. I leaned against the counter, staring at the faint line again, memorizing its shape, terrified it might fade if I looked away. I thought about every month before this, the hope that built up like a wave and crashed down even harder. The way I'd cry in the shower so Michael wouldn't hear.
Started that afternoon.
The way I'd tell.
Light at first, the kind you can talk yourself out of. I was folding laundry when it swept across my lower belly, a dull, twisting ache that made me pause mid-fold. I told myself it was normal. Every app, every forum, every friend of a friend had said early pregnancy cramps were common. It means things are stretching, I whispered to myself, trying to sound calm. But something about it didn't feel like stretching. I sat on the edge of the bed, pressing a hand against my stomach, breathing slowly. The ache came again, sharper this time, enough to make me wince. My mind started racing. I reached for my phone, typing 5 weeks cramping normal into the search bar like it was a lifeline. Every reassuring answer was immediately drowned by a terrifying one. Don't spiral. Don't spiral. Not today. Michael noticed something was off the moment he walked in. You okay? He asked, setting down the grocery bags. It's just cramps, I said quickly. Too quickly. Everyone says it's normal. He came over, brushing my hair back gently. You sure? I nodded, but the truth sat heavy in my throat. I wasn't sure at all. That evening, I barely touched my dinner. The cramps kept coming in waves, not unbearable, just wrong, different. Like my body was trying to send a message I didn't want to hear. When I went to the bathroom, I checked the toilet paper obsessively. Nothing. No spotting. I told myself that was a good sign. Still, an uneasy dread lingered beneath my ribs. Around 9 p.m., I opened my fertility app and booked a private early scan for the next morning. I didn't tell Michael. I didn't want to scare him. Not yet. I just needed someone with a medical degree to look inside me and say, "You're okay." I barely slept that night. Every tiny shift in my stomach felt amplified. Every twinge felt like a threat. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, one hand resting over my abdomen, whispering, "Please stay. Please hold on. Please be okay." By morning, the cramps had eased a little, but the fear hadn't. At the clinic, the receptionist smiled kindly and handed me a clipboard. I filled out the forms with shaking hands. When the nurse called my name, she had that cheerful, practiced tone so many nurses have, the one meant to make you feel safe. "First pregnancy?" she asked. I nodded. "Well, let's take a look at your little bean," she said with a bright smile. But the moment the ultrasound wand touched my skin, something shifted. The nurse's smile softened, then faded slightly. Not dramatically, just enough for my heart to drop into my stomach. She squinted at the screen, moved the wand, tilted her head. And then she went too quiet. My pulse thundered in my ears. The room felt colder. I gripped the sides of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice barely coming out. The nurse hesitated. That hesitation told me more than any words could have. "I'm going to get the doctor, okay? She'll take a closer look." My chest constricted. "But why? What did you see?" She forced a smile. "Just want to double-check something." But her voice was too soft, too careful. When she stepped out of the room, the silence swallowed me whole. My eyes drifted to the monitor, but it was angled just enough that I couldn't see properly. All I saw was a blur of black and gray. "Please," I whispered, tears pooling, Please let this be nothing. Dr. Morgan entered a minute later, calm but serious. She greeted me gently, asked a few questions, then began the scan again. Her face was unreadable at first. She was good at that. Too good. Finally, she spoke. "It might just be early," she said softly, eyes still on the screen. "Sometimes we don't see much at 5 weeks." "Is there a heartbeat?" I whispered. She paused, a millisecond too long. "Not yet, but that can be normal at this stage." Normal. That word felt like a thin thread I was clinging to desperately. She printed a picture, one that meant nothing yet, and told me to come back in a week. We'll have a much clearer idea then. A week. A whole week. As I walked out of the clinic, the picture trembled in my hand. A tiny black circle in a sea of gray. A maybe, a question mark, a hope hanging by a thread. When Michael picked me up outside, he smiled. "Everything okay?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. The only thing I managed was a shaky nod. My son's lying. Not exactly. But I wasn't ready to tell him the truth. Not until I knew it myself. And dating down, I already did. When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom and lay down, staring at the ceiling as the weight of everything pressed into me. Michael sat beside me, gently placing a hand on my leg. "You sure you're okay?" he asked again. I nodded, but the truth pulsed beneath my skin. Felt less like 7 days and more like a strange kind of limbo. Too long to hold my breath, too short to fully exhale. I woke up every morning wondering which emotion would win that day, hope or fear. On Monday, I woke up hopeful. I pressed my hand over my lower belly before I even opened my eyes, like I could somehow feel the answer with my palm. No cramps, no spotting, just a heavy tenderness in my chest and a sleepiness that almost felt like a symptom. Michael rolled toward me, his arm draping over my waist. "How are my 2 favorite people?" he asked, voice sleepy, warm. A tiny smile tugged at my lips. "One of them is exhausted," I said. "The other is the size of a poppy seed." He laughed softly, pressing a kiss to my shoulder. "Our poppy seed is a fighter. I can feel it." I wanted to borrow his certainty and wrap myself in it like a blanket. Instead, I just nodded and let the moment sit between us, fragile and beautiful. By Tuesday, fear had crept back in. The cramps returned, not sharp, just dull, low, persistent. I sat at my desk pretending to work while my browser filled with tabs. No heartbeat at 5 weeks, but positive outcome? Scan too early story. Nurse couldn't see heartbeat, but baby fine. Every reassuring story pulled me up. Every heartbreaking one dragged me back under. I tried to stop reading. I failed. That night, I snapped at Michael over something small. He forgot to put the leftovers in the fridge. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. "Hey," he said gently, hands raised in surrender. "This isn't about pasta." I sank onto the couch, tears burning my eyes. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I'm so scared, and I don't know what to do with it." He sat beside me and pulled me into his arms. "You don't have to do anything with it," he murmured. "You just have to let me carry it with you." For a moment, the fear loosened its grip. Wednesday was worse. Every sensation felt like a clue I didn't know how to interpret. My breasts felt less sore. My nausea, which had barely shown up to begin with, disappeared entirely. I stood in the shower, water cascading over me, and pressed my fingers against my skin, searching for tenderness that wasn't there. "What if that's a bad sign?" I whispered to the tiles. "What if everything is already over, and my body just hasn't caught up?" The anxiety sat heavy in my chest all day. I tried to distract myself, cleaning, organizing drawers, refolding baby clothes I bought months ago and then shoved into the back of the closet because it hurt too much to look at them. I pulled out a tiny white onesie I'd bought on a good day, back when hope felt less dangerous. Holding it now felt like touching something from another lifetime. I pressed it to my chest and closed my eyes. "Please," I whispered into the fabric, "please let me use this someday." By Thursday, I felt completely numb. No cramps, no obvious symptoms, no clear signs in either direction. Just a flatness that scared me more than anything else. Hope and fear had exhausted themselves, leaving only a quiet, hollow waiting. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from the clinic, reminding me of my follow-up appointment. Tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. with Dr. Morgan. My stomach flipped. It suddenly felt very real. There would be no more maybe after tomorrow. No more hiding in the gray. We were heading straight into black or white. Michael found me staring at the reminder, phone still in my hand. "Tomorrow," he said softly. "Tomorrow," I echoed. He studied my face for a moment. "On a scale from 1 to 10, how scared are you?" 4, I lied. He raised an eyebrow. "Okay, 8, I corrected. He nodded. "I'm at about a 7, he admitted. "But I keep telling myself, until someone tells us otherwise, we're still pregnant." The word pregnant made my eyes sting. "Yeah," I said. "We're still pregnant." That night, sleep didn't come easily. I lay awake listening to the clock tick, counting the hours until the appointment. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I finally drifted off, my hand resting over my belly like a promise. In the morning, I went to the bathroom and held my breath as I wiped. For a moment, all I saw was white. Relief flooded my chest, until I looked again. There, barely visible, was the faintest hint of pink. So light, I almost wondered if I was imagining it. My heart dropped into my stomach. "No," I whispered. "Please, no." I stared at the tissue, hoping the color would disappear if I blinked enough times. It didn't. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the shaking in my hands. "Okay," I told myself. "It could still be normal. Spotting can be normal." Normal. That word again. Stretching itself around things that didn't feel normal at all. The clinic waiting room looked exactly the same as it had a week ago. Same pale blue chairs, same old magazines, same soft instrumental music floating through the speakers. But everything inside me felt different. Last time I'd been here, I still had hope wrapped around me like a thin blanket. Today, it felt like I came in naked. Michael squeezed my hand as we sat down. "We've got this," he whispered. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the tiny smear of pink I'd seen that morning replayed in my mind like a silent warning. I pressed my legs together, suddenly aware of every small cramp, every flutter, every shift inside my body. The receptionist called my name, and my stomach twisted. We followed her down the hallway to the same small room as before. The lights were dim, the air cool. I climbed onto the table slowly, like my body was made of glass. The nurse came in, a different one this time, younger, softer eyes. "Hi, Alyssa. Hi, Michael," she said. "We're just going to take a look today and see how things are progressing." Progressing. The word felt sharp. She dimmed the lights further and applied the gel. The room went silent except for the hum of the machine. I watched her face instead of the screen. People always tell their truths in their expressions. Her brow furrowed, just a little. My heart dropped. She shifted the wand, tilted it, adjusted the angle. Still nothing. Is everything okay?" I whispered. She didn't answer right away. "I'm going to get Dr. Morgan," she said softly. Those were the exact same words from last week. Michael stood up. "Wait, why? What does that mean?" But she was already at the door. "The doctor will talk you through everything," she said gently, and then she slipped out, closing the door behind her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Michael sat beside me and took my hand. His eyes were already shining with fear. "It could still be early," he said. "Maybe we miscalculated again." "Maybe," I said. But inside, something was shattering. Dr. Morgan walked in 2 minutes later, but it felt like 2 hours. Her face was composed, calm, compassionate. It was the kind of expression doctors used when they were about to deliver news that would break you. "Hi, Alyssa," she said quietly. "Let's take another look." She began the scan. I watched her eyes. They didn't change. They didn't brighten. They didn't widen in recognition. They stayed soft, defeated. After a moment, she took a deep breath. "Alyssa, Michael, I'm so sorry." The words hit me like a physical blow. There's still no heartbeat, no growth from last week. Her voice softened even further. This is a pregnancy loss. I felt the world tilt. Everything around me blurred. The walls, the lights, even Michael's hand gripping mine. The only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "No." The words slipped out of me in a broken whisper. "No, please. No." Michael let out a sound I'd never heard from him, a quiet, strangled sob. He buried his face against my shoulder as tears poured down his cheeks. Dr. Morgan spoke gently, explaining options: expectant management, medication, a D&C. But her words sounded far away, like I was underwater. Nothing made sense. Nothing felt real. I stared at the monitor, at the empty black circle on the screen, at the place where hope had lived just days ago. "I'm sorry," the doctor repeated. I didn't cry at first. I just went numb. Completely, terrifyingly numb. Like my body had shut down to protect me from the impact. Michael wrapped his arms around me, his tears falling onto my gown. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm right here." I finally broke. The sob tore out of me so violently it scared me. I curled into him, shaking, my chest aching as if it was splitting open. The doctor left us alone, closing the door quietly behind her. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Minutes? Hours? At some point, the nurse came back with tissues and water, speaking in that gentle tone people use for the grieving. I couldn't look at her. I couldn't look at anything except the blurry image still burned into my mind. When we finally walked out of the clinic, the sunlight felt wrong. Too bright, too warm, too normal. Cars passed. People laughed. A dog barked. The world kept moving like nothing had shattered. But for me, everything had. Michael opened the passenger door for me, his hand shaking. "Alyssa, we'll get through this," he whispered. I nodded, but inside all I could hear was one thought looping over and over. The car ride home after the appointment felt like drifting through a dream I desperately wanted to wake up from. The world outside the window rushed by, trees, cars, people, but none of it reached me. Everything felt muted, distant, as if grief had stuffed cotton into my ears. Michael kept glancing at me from the driver's seat, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Say something," he whispered at one point. "Anything." But I couldn't. I was terrified that if I opened my mouth, I would scream. When we pulled into the driveway, I didn't wait for him. I walked straight inside, went to the bedroom, and closed the door softly. Too softly for the kind of pain ripping through my chest. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap, staring at nothing. Seconds passed. Minutes. Maybe longer. The tears wouldn't come yet. Shock was still building the walls. Michael stepped into the room slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "Alyssa," he said gently. "Don't," I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. He froze. I took a shaking breath. I need a minute." He nodded and backed out quietly, closing the door behind him. The moment he left, the numbness cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but enough for one thought to seep through. I lost our baby. Those words hit so hard, I gasped. My hand flew to my mouth as if trying to shove the truth back inside. And then the tears came. They weren't gentle. They weren't soft. They ripped out of me like something sharp was being pulled from my chest. I folded forward, hands gripping the blanket, sobs shaking through my whole body. When Michael came back in, he didn't ask permission this time. He kneeled in front of me and wrapped his arms around my waist, pressing his forehead to my stomach, right where the life had once been. "I'm so sorry," he whispered over and over. "I'm so, so sorry." I threaded my fingers through his hair, clutching him like he was the only solid thing left. "Why?" I choked out. "Why us? Why this time? Why at all?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. There was nothing either of us could say that would make sense of this. Time blurred again. At some point, he helped me onto the bed and pulled the blankets over me, sitting beside me as if keeping vigil. I stared at the ceiling, tears silently streaming into my hair. "I feel like my body betrayed us," I whispered, "like it failed." Michael sat up straighter, eyes fierce. "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that." "It's true," I said, voice cracking. "It didn't hold on. I didn't hold on." He shook his head, grabbing my hand. "Alyssa, listen to me. You didn't do anything wrong." But guilt had already rooted itself deep inside me. Later, after I managed to drink a little water, the cramping began. Subtle at first, then sharper, more real, more final. My stomach twisted, and I curled onto my side. Michael sat behind me, rubbing gentle circles on my back, whispering, "I'm right here. You're not alone. I'm right here." At some point, I drifted into a half sleep, but the moment I stood to go to the bathroom, a sharper cramp tore through me, forcing a gasp from my throat. I sat on the toilet, shaking, the world tilting around me. And then it happened. A heavy release, a shift, a moment that felt like the ground falling away. I looked down, my breath shattered. "No, no, please, no." It was the moment I had feared since the second line appeared, the moment the loss became real. I stayed frozen, staring, unable to move, unable to breathe. A sound tore from my throat, raw, broken, primal. Michael's voice came through the door. "Alyssa, are you okay? Talk to me." I couldn't answer. When he came in and saw my face, he understood immediately. His expression crumpled, and he lowered himself beside me, pulling me into his arms. "It's okay," he whispered, though his voice shook. "I've got you. I've got you." But nothing about this was okay. I felt like I just watched my future disappear in front of me, like a door had been slammed shut, like a piece of my heart had been torn out and flushed away by a world that didn't pause to notice. Michael held me on the bathroom floor, rocking me gently. At one point, he whispered, almost to himself, "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to fix you." But I was beyond fixing. I was breaking in ways I didn't yet understand. And all I could do was hold on to him and cry until after the appointment felt like drifting through a dream I desperately wanted to wake up from. The world outside the window rushed by. Trees, cars, people, but none of it reached me. Everything felt muted, distant, as if grief had stuffed cotton into my ears. Michael kept glancing at me from the driver's seat, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. "Say something," he whispered at one point. "Anything." But I couldn't. I was terrified that if I opened my mouth, I would scream. When we pulled into the driveway, I didn't wait for him. I walked straight inside, went to the bedroom, and closed the door softly. Too softly for the kind of pain ripping through my chest. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap, staring at nothing. Seconds passed. Minutes. Maybe longer. The tears wouldn't come yet. Shock was still building the walls. Michael stepped into the room slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "Alyssa," he said gently. "Don't," I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. He froze. I took a shaking breath. I need a minute." He nodded and backed out quietly, closing the door behind him. The moment he left, the numbness cracked. Just a hairline fracture. but enough for one thought to seep through. I lost our baby. Those words hit so hard I gasped. My hand flew to my mouth as if trying to shove the truth back inside. And then the tears came. They weren't gentle. They weren't soft. They ripped out of me like something sharp was being pulled from my chest. I folded forward, hands gripping the blanket, sobs shaking through my whole body. When Michael came back in, he didn't ask permission this time. He kneeled in front of me and wrapped his arms around my waist, pressing his forehead to my stomach, right where the life had once been. "I'm so sorry," he whispered over and over. "I'm so, so sorry." I threaded my fingers through his hair, clutching him like he was the only solid thing left. "Why?" I choked out. "Why us? Why this time? Why at all?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. There was nothing either of us could say that would make sense of this. Time blurred again. At some point, he helped me onto the bed and pulled the blankets over me, sitting beside me as if keeping vigil. I stared at the ceiling, tears silently streaming into my hair. "I feel like my body betrayed us," I whispered, "like it failed." Michael sat up straighter, eyes fierce. "Don't say that. Don't you dare say that." "It's true," I said, voice cracking. "It didn't hold on. I didn't hold on." He shook his head, grabbing my hand. "Alyssa, listen to me. You didn't do anything wrong." But guilt had already rooted itself deep inside me. Later, after I managed to drink a little water, the cramping began. Subtle at first, then sharper, more real, more final. My stomach twisted, and I curled onto my side. Michael sat behind me, rubbing gentle circles on my back, whispering, "I'm right here. You're not alone. I'm right here." At some point, I drifted into a half-sleep, but the moment I stood to go to the bathroom, a sharper cramp tore through me, forcing a gasp from my throat. I sat on the toilet, shaking, the world tilting around me. And then it happened. A heavy release, a shift, a moment that felt like the ground falling away. I looked down, my breath shattered. "No, no, please, no." It was the moment I had feared since the second line appeared, the moment the loss became real. I stayed frozen, staring, unable to move, unable to breathe. A sound tore from my throat, raw, broken, primal. Michael's voice came through the door. "Alyssa, are you okay? Talk to me." I couldn't answer. When he came in and saw my face, he understood immediately. His expression crumpled, and he lowered himself beside me, pulling me into his arms. "It's okay," he whispered, though his voice shook. "I've got you. I've got you." But nothing about this was okay. I felt like I'd just watched my future disappear in front of me. Like a door had been slammed shut. Like a piece of my heart had been torn out and flushed away by a world that didn't pause to notice. Michael held me on the bathroom floor, rocking me gently. At one point, he whispered, almost to himself, "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to fix you." But I was beyond fixing. I was breaking in ways I didn't yet understand. And all I could do was hold on to him
Days after
and
Sarah's
cry
visit
until
slipped
my voice
by
gave
in a
out.
strange, heavy blur. Not fast, not slow, just suspended. Like grief had stolen time's edges and turned everything into one long, aching moment. I moved through the house quietly, almost carefully, as though any sudden movement might reopen something inside me that was barely holding together. Michael stayed close, never far, watching me with a worried tenderness that made my chest hurt. But there were things no one could help me with. On the third morning, I woke before the sun. I lay still, staring at the faint outline of the ceiling, feeling the emptiness in my body like a hollow echo. My hand drifted to my lower belly out of habit. The gesture felt wrong now, pointless, but I couldn't stop myself. Michael stirred beside me. "You okay?"
he whispered sleepily. A question I couldn't answer honestly. I'm awake, I said. He hesitated, then rested his palm over mine, over the place where our baby had been. You don't have to go through this alone, he murmured. But the truth was, some parts of grief are solitary. Even love can't reach them. Later that morning, I found myself standing in the doorway of the spare room. The room we'd secretly, quietly hoped would become a nursery. The door was cracked open, as if the house itself didn't know whether to close the chapter or not. I pushed it open. Everything looked the same as before: boxes, storage bins, random furniture. But the air felt different, heavier, charged with the ghost of what might have been. In the corner was the small drawer where I'd hidden the baby things: the onesie, the booties, the little wooden rattle. My chest tightened. I opened the drawer slowly, almost reverently. The white onesie lay on top, folded neatly, untouched since the day I bought it. I lifted it to my face, inhaling the faint scent of fabric softener. It felt like goodbye. A soft knock came from behind me. You sure you want to do this today? Michael asked gently. No, I whispered, but I need to. He came to stand beside me, sliding his arm around my waist. We can put it all in a box, he said, just for now. You don't have to decide anything permanent. I nodded, tears gathering. Okay. We moved quietly, folding, sorting, placing each tiny item into a small cardboard box. It felt like packing away pieces of my heart. When we finished, I closed the lid carefully, as if sealing away something sacred. Michael touched my back. Let's go outside, he said softly. We stepped into the backyard. The air was crisp, cool. Birds chirped obliviously in the distance. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the breeze graze my skin. Michael sat beside me on the small wooden bench. I've been thinking, he said gently, about us, about everything. My stomach clenched. What do you mean? Just that. He hesitated, searching for words. We've been through something huge, and Andy won't disappear into separate corners of it. I blinked, surprised by how much the words hit me. I feel like I awarded, I admitted quietly. He nodded slowly. I know, and I've been so scared to push you that I might have stepped too far back. The honesty in his voice broke something open in me. I don't know how to let you in, I whispered. Every time I try, it hurts. He reached for my hand. Then what it hurt? Let me hurt with you. Just don't shut me out. His voice cracked on the last words. I looking at him, really looked, and saw the grief sitting heavy behind his eyes. The grief he'd been trying so hard to hide because mine seemed bigger. I'm sorry, I whispered, for making you feel alone too. Michael sacrificing my hand tightly. We're both in this. We discourage because are each other. We sat there for a long time, fingers intertwined, the morning sun slowly warming the cold spaces between us. Eventually, I leaned my head on his shoulder. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was something social and real. A beginning. That afternoon, a package arrived, a brown envelope with my brain on it. No return address. I scorn and opening it slowly. Inside the pamphlet from the clinic. Understanding early pregnancy loss. Medical die-stand explanations. Statistics. My negotiating blurred. At the bottom was a handwritten note from Dr. Morgan. Alyssa, I know this is an unbearably painful time. When your regard, I'm here to talk through what next. Ply books towards together. Prope. Fragile. The wailable felt almost courage. day, up to the composition anyway, because the alternative was deciding with forever. I placed the note in the small box beside the budget items, not as an ending, but as a placeholder for various
walking through
pain
fog.
mix.
Sometimes thin enough that I could see a little ahead, sometimes so thick it swallowed everything. Grief was unpredictable that way, kind one hour, cruel the next. On the fifth morning, I found myself standing at the kitchen counter, staring at a bowl of cereal I couldn't bring myself to eat. Michael watched me quietly from across the room, pretending to scroll his phone, but really just checking on me every few seconds. "You want toast instead?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "I don't know what I want." He nodded, the kind of nod people give when they're out of answers, but trying not to show it. "Do you want to go for a walk later? It's not too hot today." I hesitated. The idea of leaving the house felt exhausting, but the idea of staying inside all day felt worse. "Yeah," I whispered. "Maybe." We left an hour later, walking the small loop around our neighborhood. The sun was soft, warm, but not harsh. Birds hopped across lawns. Someone was mowing their grass, the scent drifting into the air. Everything looked painfully normal. Michael slipped his hand into mine. "You don't have to talk," he said. "Just stay beside me." I nodded, but the further we walked, the heavier my chest felt. We passed a couple pushing a stroller, their baby cooing softly under a blanket. My steps faltered. Michael noticed. "Do you want to turn back?" I swallowed hard. "Yes." He didn't ask why. He just turned us around, wrapping his arm protectively around my shoulders as we walked home. Inside, I collapsed onto the couch, feeling drained in a way that sleep couldn't fix. I curled into myself, drawing my knees up. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Alyssa, this is Dr. Morgan. I wanted to check in. Only when you're ready, no pressure." My breath hitched. Michael sat beside me. "From the doctor?" I nodded. "Do you want me to read it?" "No," I whispered. "I got it." I stared at the message. Just seeing her name made my chest ache. But at the same time, a small part of me wanted answers, wanted something to hold on to that wasn't grief. I think, I swallowed, voice trembling. "I think I need to talk to her." Michael nodded slowly. "Whenever you're ready, I'll sit with you, or give you space, whatever helps." Later that afternoon, I called the clinic. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. When Dr. Morgan answered, her voice was soft, steady, gentle in a way that made my throat tighten. "Alyssa," she said, "I'm so glad you reached out. How are you holding up?" "I'm trying," I whispered. "That's enough," she said. "Trying is enough right now." We talked for a long time about what might have happened, about how early miscarriages often aren't preventable, about how this didn't mean I couldn't carry a healthy pregnancy in the future. She spoke with this calm, careful confidence that made me feel seen, not blamed. But the part that stayed with me came near the end. "Alyssa," she said gently, "loss doesn't erase possibility. It just changes the timeline." I pressed my hand to my heart, tears gathering. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I know," she said, "but I want you to remember something important. This wasn't your fault, and you are not broken." When the call ended, I just sat there, phone in my lap, breathing slowly. Michael walked over and knelt in front of me. "How do you feel?" he asked quietly. I thought about it, really thought. "Like someone opened a window," I whispered. "Just a small one, but the air feels different." He smiled, a real soft smile I hadn't seen in days. "Good. That's good." That night, I lay in bed holding the small white blanket Sarah had brought. For the first time since the loss, the tears that came weren't from despair. They were from release, from softness, from the tiniest spark of hope flickering in a corner of my heart. "We're going to be okay,"
I said into the dark, as if trying to convince myself. And for the first time,
A few
a
days
part of
after
me
my
believed
call
it
with
might
Dr.
be true.
Morgan, she suggested we come in for a follow-up appointment. Nothing urgent, she'd said. Just a chance to talk, ask questions, and make a plan when you're ready. A plan. The word felt strange against my grief, like stepping onto a floor I wasn't sure was finished yet. On the morning of the appointment, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. For weeks, I'd been living in oversized t-shirts and leggings, hair pulled into whatever shape was easiest. Today, I brushed it properly, put on jeans that actually fit, swiped on a little concealer under my eyes. Michael appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame. "You look beautiful," he said softly. I snorted. I look like someone who hasn't slept in 3 weeks. He stepped closer, fingertips grazing my arm. "You look like someone who's still standing after the hardest thing she's ever been through." I swallowed, throat tightening. Standing is generous. "Leaning, then," he said. "Leaning on me. That still counts." We drove to the clinic in a quieter kind of silence this time. Not the sharp, panicked silence from before. This one felt tired, worn out, like we'd run out of ways to be scared and were left only with the ache. In the waiting room, the same pale blue chairs greeted us, the same stack of magazines. I wondered how many women had sat here with their hearts in pieces, pretending to be okay. When Dr. Morgan called us in, she didn't start with charts or screens. She started by sitting down across from us, folding her hands gently in her lap and saying, "I'm so sorry this happened to you both." The way she said both made my chest ache. "Thank you," I whispered. She walked us through everything slowly, what they'd seen on the scans, what likely happened, how common early loss was, even though it never felt common when it was your body, your baby, your life. "At this stage," she said, "it's almost never something you did or didn't do. It's usually a chromosomal issue, something that goes wrong very early that your body recognizes and responds to." "So my body rejected the baby," I said quietly. She shook her head immediately. "Your body protected you from a pregnancy that wasn't developing properly. That doesn't make it hurt less, but it does mean your body isn't broken, Alyssa. It did what it was designed to do, even though the outcome is heartbreaking." Tears stung my eyes. "It's hard not to feel like it failed." "I know," she said gently. "But from a medical standpoint, this loss actually tells us something important." I frowned. What could it possibly tell us that's good? "That you can get pregnant," she said. "That the sperm and egg can meet. That implantation can happen. Those are not small things." Michael squeezed my hand. I felt his grip tighten on the word can. "So what now?" he asked. "What do we do next?" "That's up to you," she replied. "Physically, once your next cycle returns and your blood work looks okay, you can try again when you feel ready. Emotionally, that's a different timeline. There's no rush, and there's no expiration date on this decision." I stared at the floor. What if I'm never ready? She paused, letting the question hang in the air, treating it with care. "Then you're not ready yet," she said. "And that would be okay. But from the way you're asking, it sounds less like never and more like I'm scared to go through this again." I let out a shaky breath. "I am. I'm terrified." "That fear is valid," she said, "and it doesn't close the door on your future. It just means you'll need compassion for yourself and from each other if and when you decide to walk this road again." She handed me a small printed sheet with some lab results. "We can run more tests if you have another loss," she said gently. "For now, there's nothing here that tells me
you can't carry a healthy pregnancy. The word healthy made my throat burn. As we were leaving, she added one more thing. Alyssa, she said, grief and hope can coexist. You don't have to choose one over the other. Not today, not ever. On the drive home, the world outside the window looked the same, but something inside me felt slightly shifted, like someone had nudged my heart a few degrees toward the light. Michael parked the car and turned to me. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I stared at my hands. "That I hate that this happened," I said quietly, "and that I also don't feel as doomed as I did before." He nodded. "Yeah, me too." We went inside and sat at the kitchen table, the appointment still echoing around us. After a long silence, Michael spoke. "I want to try again someday," he said softly. "Not tomorrow, not next month, just someday. But only if you want that too. I don't want to drag you into something you're not ready for." Tears filled my eyes. The week after our follow-up appointment unfolded slowly, like the world was letting me relearn how to breathe. I wasn't better, not even close, but something inside me had softened. Grief no longer felt like a storm tearing through me. It felt more like waves, still strong, still sudden, but spaced far enough apart that I could float between them. On a quiet Sunday morning, I woke before Michael. The room was soaked in early light, soft and pale. I lay still, listening to his breathing, and for the first time, the weight on my chest wasn't crushing, just heavy, manageable. I slipped out of bed and went to the kitchen. The house was silent, calm. I made tea slowly, deliberately, breathing in the steam. A small ritual, a moment that belonged only to me. When Michael walked in, rubbing his eyes, he froze when he saw me standing there. "You're up early," he said gently. "I couldn't sleep," I replied. "But it's okay." He stepped closer. "How's your heart today?" I considered the question. "A little steadier." He smiled. Not the forced smile he'd worn the first few days, but something real, hopeful. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "I'll take steadier." Later, we sat on the couch together, legs tangled, wrapped under one blanket. The quiet between us felt different now. Not strained, not fragile, just quiet. "I've been thinking," I said finally, "about us, about everything." Michael lowered the blanket slightly so he could see my face. "Tell me." "I don't want this loss to define us," I whispered. "I don't want it to be the only chapter we remember from this season." He nodded slowly. "Me neither." "I'm not ready to try again," I added quickly. "Not yet. Maybe not for a while." "That's okay," he said immediately, taking my hand. "There's no timeline here." I breathed out, relieved. "But I also don't want to live inside fear forever." His thumb brushed over my knuckles. "Then we don't. We heal at our own pace, together." We stayed like that for a long time, letting the afternoon sun spill across the room. The warmth felt good on my skin, almost symbolic, like the first hint of spring after a long winter. Later that day, I went out to the backyard alone. I carried the small box, the onesie, the rattle, the blanket Sarah made. I knelt in the grass and held the blanket against my chest. "I'm not saying goodbye," I whispered. "I'm just letting you rest." A breeze brushed across my face, cool and gentle. I closed my eyes and let it move through me. I didn't feel peace, not fully, but I felt something close to acceptance, a beginning, not an ending. When I came back inside, Michael looked up from the couch. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I actually think I am." He opened his arms. I walked into them, sinking into his chest. "We're going to be okay," he murmured. I know, I said softly, and for the first time, I meant it. That night, lying in bed, I placed my hand over my belly again. Not in grief this time, not in desperation, just connection. A quiet promise to myself. I wasn't broken. I wasn't finished. My story wasn't over. And someday, when my heart felt strong again, I would decide what came next. But tonight was enough. Tonight, I had breath. I had love. I had hope. And that was enough to carry me into tomorrow. Thank you for listening to today's story. If this touched your heart, please remember you are not alone. Not in your fear, not in your hope, and not in your journey. Before we close, if you're struggling with ovulation, irregular cycles, or you just want clearer guidance on your TTC journey, I've put together 7 gentle tips that help you understand what your body is doing each month. You can find them here, www.theinfertilitysecrets.com. No pressure, just a resource for anyone who wants it. And if this episode helped you feel seen, please follow, share, or leave a comment. Your voice helps other women feel less alone too. Thank you for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next episode. You are stronger than you think.